Hey, welcome to the Tooth Going podcast. In this episode today, I'm going to talk a little bit about a lot of just misconceptions about CPAs and how they interact with dental practices and dental practice owners and dental businesses and the things that go along with that. Because I talk to almost 1,000 dentists every year, most never having worked with a CPA before, some transitioning through CPA, some had bad expectations that they didn't meet with their prior CPA, which is the reason they're moving to the new one. And so I like to talk to people about some of the expectations and some of the things that go on the CPA side of things, because on the dental side, you guys obviously know a lot. And in terms of how your business operates, at least if you've been in practice before, but not everybody understands the CPA side of things. So today I talk a little bit about some big misconceptions about your CPA that you may not realize in terms of the dental CPA space or just the CPA space in general as well. So it's going to be a mix of those two things, a mix between a generalist CPA thing and also a dental CPA thing. So the first thing is technology. Surprisingly, I think a lot of people today, especially newer business owners and new graduates and people that are just coming into the ownership for the first time, think I can just push a whole bunch of information down into this computer and all of a sudden the CPA is going to spit out tax returns on the other side and they're going to be optimized, they're going to be done well and everything like that. But it's not. It is not that way. Even with technology and even all the cool things that AI is doing right now, it just doesn't work on the tax and accounting side of things. So we can't just hook a computer up to your business and all of a sudden you get tax returns out and everything's done and automatically finished and things like that. It's a lot of work. There's a lot of things that go on behind the scenes to be able to get from your credit card swiping on a machine for your business to that being reported as a deduction on your tax return. There's just a whole lot of stuff that goes on. Just to kind of equate this back to the dental space, a lot of my clients complain about how EagleSoft and Dentrix and Open Dental and all the different practice management softwares are out there, SoftDent, CareSoft, et cetera. Well, maybe Open Dental and Curve are the exceptions to this. How those softwares are all just so antiquated and they feel so old and so clunky and not very new, app friendly in terms of the new internet and things like that. The same thing exists on the CPA side. So to do your tax returns nowadays, the tax software that we use to create your tax returns and file them, it's old. It's stuff from the early 2000s in terms of software and the technology and things like that. And the reason is because just like in the dental space, very giant companies are the ones that own these tax software technologies because it's such a mess to try and update how hey, you put this number in here. How does it affect a tax return? There's so many different components that go into it that it makes it really messy from the technology side. And that's just for the tax return. I'm not even talking about the intake process for getting that information in there, the accounting software, the practice management software that us as CPAs have to manage, the emails that come through, the processing of the documents, the PDF write-ups. There's just a lot of stuff that happens between your business and you personally existing and those returns being completed in terms of compliance. So that's a very big misconception. Sometimes people think that, hey, all I should have to do is, I can give you access to my business checking account and all of a sudden a computer's going to beep, boop, spit out my tax return at the end of the year. It's not that simple. There's a lot of work that goes into it. Our average client at Tooth and Coin, we spend somewhere 80 to 100 hours a year taking care of their stuff, 2 to 3 weeks of time of a person in terms of their work life just to get through everything A to Z or just getting that stuff out. So it's a lot of work and it takes a lot of time. So that's a big misconception is that technology, since it's getting so much better, that it's going to be able to just to take away all the manual work that is required to do the work. It just doesn't exist. Now, I've used a lot of the technologies. Believe me, we're investing in them and we're looking at them and we're paying attention to them, but they're not ready. They're not near ready for real world use because if it gets it done 60% well, that 40% to fix, that 60% is not saved time. It's only time that we got to go back and redo all those things. And so it's kind of a waste of time. It ends up not being very efficient for use. So technology is a big thing with that. The facilitation of data back and forth is still rough in terms of that too, because it's very fragmented. How do I ask you for a 1098 from your mortgage, as well as how do I look at a purchase from your business? And so technology, it's not there. It's getting better every year because there are some smaller forward-thinking new app companies coming out that are helping these issues. I'm hopeful that in 5 to 10 years, it's going to be way more streamlined than it is today. But that's something that we're hoping for too. It's not something that we're trying to get away from. The only people that are trying to get away from that stuff are the people that really want to sell you their time and just want to do pay compliance work because of the complexity of the compliance work. And the people that want to deliver the higher value things, like firms like ours, we welcome that new technology because we prefer to do the high value work rather than the low value, time consuming work. So the second thing that your CPA may not tell you about is how many hours they typically work during tax season. I had an email come in last tax season where a client was like, I had no idea you guys were working that much. I'm sorry that I acted that way, because they were very frustrated. They hadn't gotten an email back in 2 or 3 days. And I was like, hey, look, this person's working like 80 to 100 hours a week. We try to purposely make it to where our team members don't have a ton of work to do. CPAs in general, we put a lot of stress on ourselves during this time of year because we're trying to get everything done. And there are weeks in the year that our team members will have to work tons of hours just to get everything done. We try at our firm to make sure that that doesn't happen as much as humanly possible, but that does happen on occasion because of the way the workloads fall. And so communication can be tough for CPAs between mid-January and April 15th. Now, it depends on your firm that you're working with. It depends on how much of a workload they have. It depends on the responsibilities in their position at that firm. But that's a really tough time to communicate. It's probably going to be harder for you to get on the phone with someone and get a meeting with someone than it will be to be able to reply to an email. That also depends on that CPA's ability to manage their email workload and their responsiveness through email. But that's something that everybody needs to be made aware of that interacts with a CPA firm from a tax and accounting side of things, just in general. And not a lot of CPA firms will tell you about that. They assume that you know that. Because like I said, that client that reached out to us, I was blown away that he'd never heard that CPAs work busy hours during tax season. And we do, because it's a very busy time. I've said this in other podcast episodes. They're like, we're used to the way it was you felt like it was a badge of honor to work as many hours as you could during tax season, because that was like what the cool kids did. But at our firm, we try to keep that away from things because we don't want our team members to burn out. We want our team members to go and have a good work-life balance and to be happy with their work and to enjoy doing the work that they have in front of them every day to help our clients so that we can be as efficient and as effective at getting those things done as we possibly can. So the third piece that I'm going to talk to you about in terms of expectations and assumptions that you may need to know about your CPA is that most CPA firms, not all of them, but a lot of them, they literally think that you're going to come to their office, you're going to have all of your stuff ready, you're going to give it to them, and then they're going to go do the tax returns. Some clients were surprised whenever we reach out proactively. It's like, hey, here's all the stuff that we need. Give us a list of all these things. Here's A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Please make sure you get this to us. And here's like the spot where you put them in. Here's where you can upload it. Here's where the portal is. Here's all these other types of things so that you can facilitate this back and forth of data as efficiently as you can. We pay a lot of money to software companies to be able to do that and be able to send that out in an efficient manner from our side. And number one, we got to get a list of everything together. Number two, we got to send it to you. Number three, you've got to be able to upload it in an efficient manner that's simple enough for you to use. Most don't realize a lot of CPA firms that it's not that way. They're just like, hey, okay, bring me your stuff when it's ready. And they're like, well, what stuff do you need? It's like, just your tax stuff, right? I need copies of your financial statements and anything that's related to your personal stuff. You bring the folders in, they process the information, say, here's your tax return, you're done. I'm not saying this for every H&R Block, but if you go to a place like an H&R Block, that's what you'll get. You'll walk in with your stuff, you'll put it on their table, they'll sort through the stuff and file your return, and you'll be done. It'll be over. But what most don't realize is that may not mean that your return was done well. In fact, it probably means it's likely not been done well unless you are so savvy that you could have probably done the tax return yourself. There's a big assumption from a lot of CPA firms that the client knows what needs to go on the return. And that's dangerous because that means that you could miss things if you aren't asked the right question. So at our firm, we ask a ton of questions of our clients to make sure that they understand, what we need to know in order to be able to make sure their return is as accurate as it possibly can. The fourth thing that's a big misconception in the tax and dental space is the liability piece. So you'll see all these people on TikTok and on Facebook and on Instagram and all the other social media places that I don't ever really follow other than like to post pictures of my kids and their sporting things, is that they'll talk about all these really crazy tax strategies that you can do to eliminate your taxes and, leverage yourself to the hilt of going out and buying short-term rental properties and things like that. But a lot of people don't realize in the public spaces that whenever you engage with a CPA firm or any tax preparer, you're going to have what's called an engagement letter. That engagement letter is what says, hey, tax preparer, I want you to file my return for me. And by the way, everything that goes on the return is going to be my responsibility. When I say my, I mean like as in the taxpayer, not the CPAs. And because like I said in the prior point, the assumption is that you got all your stuff in and that you know what everything's supposed to be on there. The other assumption of that is that everything that you said was put on that return is going to be accurate and is going to be deductible in like a tax law way. It's crazy, right? Well, it's true. If you go read your engagement letter, that's what it means. The engagement letter states that the CPA firm is being engaged to file the tax return. It is not being engaged to audit you. It's not being engaged to differentiate if that was a dental supply or dental equipment, if it should have been capitalized or whatever it was. That's your job as the business owner to tell us if that's what's happened. Now, certain companies, certain firms will try to go the step farther and say, hey, let's talk about it. Let's make sure that these things are in the right place. Let's make sure everything goes on the right, things like that, so that your returns are filed well. Make sure if there is a strategy like the short-term rental one that, hey, are you aware of what you have to do to be able to be in compliance, to be able to hit this loophole? If so, here's the steps that you've got to follow, and here's the logs you need, here's all the information you need. Now, we're not going to go and audit you. We're not going to go and look and make sure you did all those things, but we want to make sure at least what you're signing up for when you sign that tax return. And the confusing part about this, the misconception of that, is that a lot of clients think that the CPA takes some responsibility for that. And while we do sign the tax return, we sign it with that engagement letter being a part of it, saying, hey, this is your responsibility, not ours. This is accurate. So very important piece to understand is that liability, if someone gets in trouble for that return not being accurate or done well, it's most likely going to be you, not the CPA firm. So that's an important distinction to understand in terms of the assumption that's going on with how your CPA operates and things like that. The final one is one that until I got into the dental space, I didn't realize was a thing. And that was that I think a lot of clients that come through, they assume that us as CPAs are going to know everything about their business and everything about business and understand all the different complexities of running a small business and how to operate and how to manage and how to be a leader and things like that. And that is not the case. I would say a very, very, very small percentage of CPAs know how to run a business or know how to even be in business at that. Most CPAs, they know how to do taxes. Taxes do not equate to business success. I'm pretty lucky that we've got such a great team here at Tooth and Coolin where I am the leader of 30, 35 team members in terms of our CPA firm. And so I obviously have some experience in running a business and I can talk to clients about that. But that CPA that's 5 years out of college, they don't know how to run a business. You don't know how to run a business until you've ran one. And it's a big misconception that like, hey, just because I sign up for CPA services, that you're all of a sudden going to have this business coach here to be able to help you with understanding all these different components of what's going on with your stuff. In addition, the CPA may not even be great at accounting. They may not even understand how financial statements really operate, with the exception of how they operate in terms of getting on your tax return. So they may not understand how to do benchmarking. They may not understand what financial analysis is. They may not understand how to compare your practice's actual results to your business results in terms of like, what type of context does this financial analysis need to be placed on it to be able to understand if it is within the bounds of reason or not. So there's a lot of pieces to that puzzle. I think a lot of dental practice owners think that CPAs, I'm not speaking in absolutes here. I'm not saying every dentist thinks this thing, but I think that since there are so many dental CPAs out there that have kind of hung their hat in the last 30, 40 years saying, hey, we're the CPAs for dental practice owners, that's kind of conflated a little bit into thinking that, hey, CPAs are kind of like the pseudo business / practice management consultant. And that's uniquely in the dental space. That's not really in most other industries. So I've said this in the podcast before, whenever I helped small businesses, there would be hairstylists all the way up to oil companies that my old CPA firms would help out with. Those hairstylists were coming to me saying, hey, what's a good margin on my product? Or, hey, am I spending the right amount on my booth rent on a monthly basis for how much foot traffic I get? Or they weren't saying things like, are we charging enough oil per barrel or anything like that? Like, that's not a thing in like a lot of other industries, but in the dental space, it's somewhat uniquely. Perspective comes from a lot of dentists that, hey, that CPA is going to tell me if I'm not charging enough for this crown or something like that. In reality, most CPAs don't have a clue what any of those things are. I had an old business partner. He used to say that most CPAs can't tell you the difference between a prophy and a trophy, which I'm not really sure where that line came from, but other than just the rhyming scheme, but he was really good at selling that. And that's true for most CPA firms, is they don't understand the difference between what prophy is or a trophy in terms of being able to understand like and conceptualize that and relate that into financial results that mean financial success for your business and ultimately financial success for you as a dental practice owner. I know this was a shorter episode. I hope it was helpful. Again, just 5 big misconceptions about working with a CPA from a CPA's perspective as well. And just a reminder of those 5 things, it was that there's a bunch of technology issues on the CPA side that we wish were fixed, but aren't. Technology is just not there yet. 2, is that the hours that CPAs work during tax season are usually pretty intense, which means you may have delays when it comes to talking to your CPA. 3 is that most CPA firms will assume that you've got your stuff together and complete, and you're going to understand the implications of the transactions that occurred on your stuff from a tax perspective, and that you're going to take responsibility for your own compliance. So the 4th is that liability is not on the CPA, but on you of actually being accurate, because I know a lot of dentists come to us and assume that, hey, we're going to tell you how to be in compliance, but a lot of CPA firms do the opposite. It's kind of a weird world in that. And the 5th and final one is that not all CPAs understand business or how businesses interact or like what makes a business successful. Those are 5 misconceptions that dentists have about CPAs that I hear pretty consistently. And I try my hardest to tell new clients as they come through from an expectation standpoint where our firm stands on those things. And it's a bit more nuanced than what I said in this episode because I kind of ran through those a little bit quickly. But if we know that's how a lot of clients feel, then we can interact with those clients in the right way to say, hey, by the way, here's all the things that I need to know from you in order for me to file your return, because we're not going to do the same thing that a lot of CPA firms do and say, hey, just give me your stuff. We're going to reach out to you for those things. We're going to reach out to you throughout the year with your projections so you understand how much you're going to owe before you owe it, rather than waiting for you to come to us and say, hey, I'm going to make an extra $150,000 this year. What do I need to do about taxes? We're going to reach out to you and say, hey, looks like you're going to owe an extra $150,000 in taxes this year. Here's some of the things that you should be doing to be able to limit that. So understanding that's the perspective and perception definitely helps us to interact with those perspectives and perceptions in a much more efficient manner. And every good CPA will have an understanding of that as well. So that's it. That's the podcast.